And today is the anniversary birthday of Swami Kriyananada. And Swami Dhyana and I are here celebrating this with our Guru Bhais at Ananda Village in California. And it's a joy to be able to share this through the web, through the internet with all of you as well today. It's a very holy day, very special day. We're going to begin our program this evening with a video of Swami's Jyotish and Devi, our spiritual directors for Ananda Sangha, and they're going to begin with a 8 or 9 minute video on Swami's birth, beginning with that. So let's share that video, and then Dhyanaji and I will follow that video with some words of our own.
Hello everyone. May 19th is the anniversary of Swami Kriyananda's birthday, and we have just finished dedicating the Moksha Mandir, which is the final resting place for his body, and is a place that will be a spot of pilgrimage for people for decades, perhaps centuries to come. People will come there to meditate, to feel the expansion of the grounds, the expansion of the building itself, but most important, the expansion, the joy, and the love of Swami Kriyananda. His life was such a testament of bringing divine qualities into this world. I would say that there are a couple of aspects in his life that are the most important to me, and I was with him, as was Devi, for our whole adult life for more than 45 years. But the qualities that were most important to me was his constant caring and kindness and love for everyone around him. Yes, he was a genius on so many levels, and he accomplished so many things. But the more important thing was that he was a channel for divine love, because his accomplishments, to a certain extent, had people look at him and say, oh, how wonderful he is. His love made them feel that they were accepted, cared for, and their lives were changed. We heard a story just a week ago of a man who was not a very deep devotee. He had a little bit of interest in the spiritual path, but he met Swami Kriyananada, and after that he cried for a week because his heart had opened up so much just from that brief contact. And so that was the most important thing. But the other aspect is that Swami didn't channel just a human love. Human love alone, personal love alone, can't accomplish what we saw, the miracles that we saw in his life. He defined himself as a devotee, as a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda, and that was the core of his life. So he channeled love, he channeled kindness, but it wasn't ego-generated. It was divine love, divine kindness, that was an extension of that which Yogananda also channeled. And by being a point of light for the universal light, a point of love for the universal love, they had the power to change lives and, in fact, to uplift the whole world. So on this, his birthday, it is very good, yes, to remember him, but more to emulate him. So let's, as Jesus said, love one another. And as Master said, when I am gone, only love can take my place. Let's be a channel for that divine love to everyone we meet.
Hello. In Swamiji's wonderful autobiography, The New Path, in the first chapter, when he talks about his coming into this world and his childhood, he mentions, there's a sentence that always struck me with so much depth and power. He said, I believe I came into this world fully myself. What does that mean? It means he came into this world self-aware. He came into this world with a great amount of inner realization, self-realization, developed from other lifetimes. But then he went on to say later in that chapter, but I realized that the role I wanted to play in this lifetime, the way I felt I would be the most effective in helping other people, was just to be their friend, not to be a great exalted teacher or a author, a writer, composer, all these things he did, of course. But as Jyotish was saying, the most powerful thing he did, and the role that he felt was the most spiritually helpful to others, and that I believe he felt the most comfortable in, was simply to be people's divine friend. And Jyotish and I had the remarkable blessing, for which I am grateful for every day, of spending a great deal of time with Swami, traveling with him around the world, watching him interact with people. And just as the children's song he wrote, all the world was his friend. Whatever culture, and he was blessed with great linguistic ability. We watched him in Europe speaking warm, colloquial German with one devotee, French with another devotee, Italian, all in the course of, one right after the other, sequentially. And because all the world was his friend, and people felt that. They felt exalted by that kind of friendship that is personal to some extent, but to a much larger extent, just God's love flowing to us. And in fact, most of Swami's letters that he wrote to people, offering them counsel or guidance, his salutation, or his closing, I should say, was always in divine friendship. And in fact, we've published a book of his letters, collected letters, called just that, In Divine Friendship. And so, as we celebrate his birthday, the day will come when all of us who knew Swami, we will be with him no more. We will be with you no more. Hopefully we will be with him. In fact, one of the last times we were with Swami, he was saying, well, I won't be around much longer. And then he looked at us and he said, and you're getting on too. You won't be around much longer either. And I thought, well, that's good news. And I look forward to that. But for all of us who knew him will one day be gone. And then the next generation and the next generation will have to be representatives of that beautiful quality of divine friendship. And so, in closing, the best way we can celebrate Swamiji's birthday, May 19th, the best way we can be channels for what he brought into this world is to offer him the gift to others of that quality of divine friendship that he lived, that he modeled for us, that he imbued within us. And if each of us, it's like a beautiful torch of divine light and love that's handed from one generation to the next generation, on and on and on, until the whole world is filled with that light of divine friendship and love. So, happy birthday to each of us, because the soul that is Swami Kriyanananda is cosmically present now and can be reached within our own hearts when we attune to that vibration of divine love and divine friendship. Joy to you.
Such beautiful words. We celebrate the birthdays of great ones, Swamiji in this case, but also throughout the year we celebrate the birthdays of all of our masters, our guru, his guru, Lahiri Mahashai. We even have a day for Babaji, although we don't know what his actual birthday is. But why do we celebrate these? It's not necessarily for their benefit. Of course, they're in bliss. Their earthly lives are past. They don't need that celebration. There's nothing that they need. But we celebrate these birthdays for our sake. By remembering the great ones who have passed before us, we bring them alive in our own consciousness. In that process, we attune ourselves to those things that they represented. And for each one of us, they represented many different things, depending upon the qualities in ourselves that resonated with those great ones. And I think we see that with each of the masters. They touch us in a very unique way. And Devi and Jyotish here were emphasizing that quality of friendship that Swami Kriyanananda so clearly manifested to all of those who had the very good karma, good fortune to be able to associate with him. And I think you can feel that quality even now flowing through his writings and through his music and through, of course, the stories that all of us share with Swamiji. He had so very many qualities and that are inspiring to us. I remember a story of one particular quality that I'd like to share with Swamiji that I remember. A story that he writes about in his book, The New Path. He tells of at a time when he was at Mount Washington in the early days, when he was with Master, that he was assigned the job of speaking very early in his discipleship with Master. Master recognized his talents to be able to reach out to others, and that this would be his karma that he had told. Master had told Swamiji that it would be writing and lecturing and editing. And so Swamiji was assigned that job. And at one occasion, he made some sarcastic comments to one of the parishioners who was coming in to listen to the discourse. And a day or two later, a few times later, he was with his master guru, and Master was talking to him about one thing or another, and at the conclusion he says, and oh, by the way, he says, when you're greeting people and when you're talking to people, don't talk about such things as making reference to what he had told this gentleman. He says, don't say such things. It's not dignified to be like that. And Swamiji was quite surprised because this was a private conversation that he had had with this gentleman. And he says, sir, you knew what he had said, you see. And Master said, yes, I know every thought that you think. And Swamiji was very surprised at the statement of that, the reality that he knew everything that he think. But then that in itself is a remarkable story. But then the part that struck me is then Swami goes on to say, oh, Master, I welcome, he expressed to his guru, I welcome your correcting me in this way to know everything and to set me straight, because I don't think everybody would particularly welcome that, to know that all of your thoughts, all of your feelings and the impressions are that you're completely transparent, because often who knows what goes across our mind. But Swamiji welcomed it, and he was sincere in that because he wanted everything that he was thinking, he wanted it to be in tune with his guru. And this is what marks, you could say, the true disciple. And being a true disciple surely is what Swamiji was. He wanted to be in tune. He wanted Master. And to do that, he invited the guru into his life to be able to correct him when he needed correction and to set his direction straight. And this is the lesson that I think each of us need to take, is we need to be open. Now, Swamiji's saying this, and you may think that I'm saying, oh, we need to be open to Swami in that way, or we need to be open to Master in that way. And yes, I am saying that, but I'm saying something more than that, is that we need to be open to God to be able to correct us if we want to be a true disciple. Many people will say that, oh, I want you, please tell me, what can I do? How can I better my life? What can I do? And they'll express that thought very sincerely. But then at the same time, maybe 20 seconds later, somebody will come up and say, oh, sir, would you move your car? It's blocking the parking lot. And they'll feel very resentful of it. Well, you see, they've just expressed, you've expressed that to somebody. I want to be open. I want to be corrected. I want to be guided. Please tell me what to do. And God comes at the very next instant through this other gentleman asking you to move your car, and you get resentful. We have to take this in a sense that God is speaking to us through all of life. And the guru is an expression of the divine, a manifestation of that, who is able to channel that to us. But yet, through that openness to the guru, really it's not to that personality, it's to God. We open and God speaks to us. And so we learn to be open to the individual or to the individual expression in order that we might be able to invite and see God's guidance coming to us in everything that we do. And this is what Swamiji embodied. He was open. He wanted to be corrected. He wanted to be guided. And Master thereby actually did guide him. Because he saw that here was someone who wanted to receive what he had to offer. And the same was true in Swami's life. It was very difficult to actually have Swamiji tell you something specific of what you might want to do. Many people would go to him and say, Swami, please, should I do this? Should I do that? Guide me in this, guide me in that. He was reticent about very freely giving out guidance to just anybody, because that person may not have demonstrated a willingness to be able to receive. And so when he did correct you, you took it, gratefully and with an honor. I remember once very early in my association with Swami, I tended to have a habit of slouching a little bit. And he came up and he says, you must learn to stand up straight. He said it in a very firm way, and he actually physically pushed me up into a straight position. And then he marched on. And I remember I said, he's right. And I was so grateful for that, because to me, to have somebody actually come and tell me something like that, which was perhaps not something necessarily everybody wants to hear, but I said, yes, it's true. And I was honored to be able to receive that type of an instruction. And he would, from time to time, he would correct people in that way. But if in any case you had this thought, of rejection of that, any thought of closeness, then that was fine. He would honor each individual's God-given right to have their own free will. And you had to coax that out of him. But when he saw that you were willing to listen to what he had to say, then he would do that. I'd like to, we had this weekend, this few days ago, we had this dedication of the Moksha Mandir, and some of us had a opportunity to share stories. And one of the people who shared was Narayani, who many of you know, and she acted as Swamiji's assistant, personal assistant in the latter years of his life. And she told a very sweet story that I want to repeat for those who hadn't heard. And Narayani was Spanish. She was born in Spain, and her language ability in English was not very good when she first met Swamiji. But Swami was encouraging to her as to improve her language skills. And finally, she eventually became his personal assistant. And one day, Swamiji told her, complimented her, says, "Oh, your language skills are improving quite a bit." And she felt quite good about that. But then he says, "But your written English is terrible." He did not mince his words. He says, "It's terrible and you need to improve it." And she says, but she was grateful to hear that, because one, she knew her written English was not very good. And Swami says, "But I'd like to help you." He says, and so he told Narayani, he says, "Every night, before you go to bed at night, write me a very short email in English. Just about anything. It doesn't matter. Just every night, write an email to me. And then I will correct it, and I'll send it back to you, and I'll correct the English mistakes that you make. And this way, you'll become better at your written English." And so Narayani began to do that, and every night she would write this email. Now you can see what might be the result of that. Was this an English lesson that Swamiji was giving Narayani? Yes, it was. It was an English lesson, but might there not also be something else as well? Every night, she was thinking of Swamiji before she went to sleep. She was thinking, and she was writing something, and she was communicating to him. Now, she may have probably would have done this mentally anyway, but it gave that expression. But the act of kindness of him taking a little bit of time out of his busy schedule to be able to do that was very touching to her, that Swami would be so kind to have that consideration. But on the other hand, another lesson in there is she had demonstrated an openness and a willingness to be able to receive that. And it was in that he was able to take, even in little things, make a little bit of correction. Sometimes he would come up to somebody and he would, if they were wearing a nice article of clothing, he would compliment them. And another time, especially some of the young fellows who weren't always so well dressed, he would do that more to the ladies, I think, complimenting. But no, I had him actually give me a compliment once or twice in that way. But he would sometimes, tell somebody, he says, you just clean it up a little bit, or maybe just do, some of the monks and the young monks would not always be dressed appropriately, and he would say something. Now, if a person would do that casually to any stranger on the street, they would say they might be offended. But of course, it was a great blessing when Swami actually showed that consideration. And to the degree that we would be able to accept that thankfully and gratefully, and more importantly, correct ourselves. You see, that has to go with it too. Doesn't mean we just heard it with our ears, but we heard it with our heart, and we integrated what his suggestions were. Then he would give more, and he would know that relationship was there. Now, I'm speaking of this in terms of the relationship with Swami, but the great ones come to illustrate something larger. And the larger message here is it wasn't Swami so much as the personality is teaching us to be open to guidance when it comes. And if we have that attitude, which we can practice, in this case, we were practicing with Swamiji to always be open, but then to realize that that's just an expression of something larger, to see beyond the personality to God is speaking to us. In this case, Master, I always took it as Master was speaking to me. Paramahansa Yogananda was speaking to me through Swami. Swami was the instrument for my connection to Master, but yet even Master would say it's not, there's nobody dwelled in that body anymore but God. So it is that Master was the opening to receiving guidance from God. And to personalize it too much and forget the larger source from which guidance is coming, to whom and to what we are actually tuning ourselves, we forget and we don't see it, that it's coming to us in many forms. That fellow who's honking his horn at you, maybe God's behind that, or whatever it might be, that we have to have that open attitude. Oh, people would say, oh, Swami told me to do this, so I'll do it. But you tell me to do it, maybe you brought a message from Swami. Oh, it's coming from you. I'm not going to listen to that. And you close off. That's not the right attitude of a devotee. The devotee and the disciple is open to guidance and correction wherever it might be. Truth. Let truth be our guide. And be open to that truth, and you'll find the channels for that truth will begin to open to you. And you'll begin to see them opening more and more and more. And pretty soon you see guidance is coming to you from every direction. And this was Swami. And this was the attitude that he embodied in everything he did. God is God and Guru. God and Guru. How can I serve you? Guide me. Guide me. Let me be thy servant.
Namaste, and joy to all of you. It's wonderful to be able to speak with you today. It's such a blessed day of Swamiji's birth, and we feel so much joy, almost too much joy, and I'm sure you can feel it too, coming from Swamiji. I was thinking of course, we're celebrating Swamiji's physical birth on earth and all the wonderful things he did, his life, his accomplishments, what he means to us in our lives. But beyond that, we're celebrating Swamiji's birth in the astral realms, in the causal realms, his birth in God, his freedom from this world, his freedom in God, the fact that he's with Master and all the gurus and all the great masters, that he's become one with them, that he's become one with Master, that he's become a master himself, that he's become one with God. This is what I like to think of on this day of Swamiji's birth, not only here, but that he's been born into infinity, he's been born into eternal light, he's been born into eternal bliss. And we congratulate Swamiji for that. And I feel he's opening the door for all of us to come, as in one of the yoga posture affirmations, come join me, friends, in my feast of love and joy. And I feel Swamiji is calling to us, especially today, because he knows we're focused on him, and he's calling our souls to merge with him. He's the doorway for us, and on this day we certainly feel that call and that pull to be with him, perhaps more than other days. But this is his true birth. He's eternally in our hearts and eternally will draw us in the direction of meeting again, of being in God consciousness, of celebrating together. And I think of all the qualities that I saw in Swamiji, the one that inspired me the most was his bliss, that he was so happy, not happiness, but he had divine joy. Just from the very first day I met him, I saw that in his eyes, I saw it in his actions. I heard it in his voice, in his music, and that's what drew me. I said, I've never seen this in anyone. Someone who's really happy, deeply joyful, blissful. And I saw that throughout the years I knew Swamiji, which were many decades. And one of the happiest days of the year we spent with Swamiji was this day, his birthday. I think the birthdays of the masters, but then his actual birthday. It was as if we were in the astral world, all of us. And there were, and the typical day would be that Swamiji would invite some close friends over for brunch. The close friends, small group would be 100 people typically. And so his friends would come and we'd spend hours there with him. And then in the afternoon, he would invite all the communities, anyone who could make it. And that would be hundreds of people coming to greet Swamiji, and everyone with a gift. We were so happy because it was all the love we had felt for so many years from Swamiji. We could reciprocate that in a special, particular way on that day. And each person would go forward with their present and kneel before Swamiji or just sit before him, and he would accept your gift. But more than anything, you felt he was blessing you. And sometimes he actually would bless you or touch you on the head, and it was magical. And then there would always be an enormous sized cake and many layers. And I think one year, if I'm not mistaken, they had the candles that you really can't blow out. And Swamiji kept trying to blow them, but they wouldn't go. It was just, you felt this is how life should be. And we'd all share the cake, and then Swamiji would typically read from the beautiful humorous stories of P.G. Wodehouse. And we'd laugh, and it was just so full of joy. And the other thing is the phone would be ringing all day long because people would call from all over the world and greet Swamiji, and he was just waiting for those calls. He would have the phone right nearby, and people called from many countries, and it was so full of love and so full of joy. And where would any of us be without Swamiji? And it became, as Daviji said, our own birthday. We were all celebrating our birthday together. And because Master, through Swamiji, gave us our spiritual birth, Master, through Swamiji, taught us about God, about the Masters. He gave us our techniques. He gave us the liberating technique of Kriya Yoga that came through Swamiji. God, through him, all the teachings, the music, the communities, all the places we could go. Swamiji became our spiritual father, and he still is. He gave us our spiritual names, a quality that you should aspire towards. He gave us things we needed to work on, as Jayaji was saying. If we received those, he gave us a life's focus. Maybe you want to do this, put your energy in this particular way in your life. More than anything, as Daviji said, though, it was so encouraging. He was always your friend. Good times, hard times. Swamiji, I think more than anyone. Sometimes other people would run away or walk away, but Swamiji just was always there. And it was remarkable. How could anyone do as much as one person as he did. And he, of course, what he said, at the end of my life, I want to be known as a good disciple. And we saw, we had a special preview of the movie The Answer the other day, and you'll be able to see it. We'll all see it, maybe some of us together in India. But what touched me the most was how Swamiji was so devout. He was so focused on every word Master told him. Everything he said for him to do. Swamiji, in his eyes and his demeanor, he just was so reverent. He was standing in front of God, and God was through his guru, and everything he said, he attempted to do it. Even if he couldn't, Master sent him to speak on his behalf. He had only been there a few months. And Swamiji said, I've never given a talk in my life. And the monk who came in to deliver that news, he said, well, he gave him the bus money and said, you should get going. And he said, not only that, he wants you to give Kriya. And Swamiji said, I've never had Kriya, I only have one, my own. And he said, well, you better get going. But he did it. And he did everything Master asked him to do. And for me, the most important thing I saw and the greatest gift of all that Swamiji gave was he was such a great disciple. And he showed how a disciple should behave, what are the thoughts, how to be inspired, how to be uplifted, how to have discipline, how to be joyful, how to be enthusiastic, energetic. He showed how we can be good disciples of Master as well. And so how do we keep connected with Swamiji now? Well, he's there as he always was, but we have to reach up to him and open to him and can ask him to continue to help us. Pray to him. Offer things that are disturbing to you, difficulties. Ask for his guidance. Don't feel Swamiji's gone. He's not gone. So many people here. Over the weekend, there were 600 people. I heard from so many people, I feel Swamiji so strongly. I feel him more than I ever felt him before. And it's not just here at Ananda Village. He's omnipresent now. So if we pray to him, we call him, we open ourselves, Swamiji will be with us. I'll share a couple of very beautiful stories or things that happened. One man who was here this weekend, his name is Yogi. He's the leader of our Singapore group. And he told a very beautiful story of how he came onto the path. Now, he didn't know about Master, he didn't know about Swamiji, and he was seeking in his life, and he asked God. Actually, he prayed to God in the form of Jesus Christ. That's who he prayed to at that time. And he said, show me your highest teaching. I want to know your highest teaching. That was his prayer. And what happened? He goes to a bookstore and he finds the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. Now he asked Christ to show him his highest teaching, and he finds the Bhagavad Gita. And he loved it, and inside was a little card from Ananda Sangha, and he found the information. And from that, he got online and he found out there was a program happening right in Singapore of Ananda Sangha. And he came, and he, because of all the many things he had done in the past, he received Kriya actually quite quickly. But he didn't know about Swamiji, he didn't know about Ananda Sangha, he didn't know about Master, he didn't know about any of this, but he prayed for the highest teachings. And he finds Swamiji. Swamiji, Master through him. Another beautiful thing I wanted to share, we had a private ceremony last night, a private Kriya with one of our dear friends and Guru Bhais here that Jyotishji gave. And this person was very close with Swamiji. And of course, as many people, was missing him. But after the ceremony, we walk out of the temple and we look up in the sky and there's a rainbow forming. And we all thought, there's Swamiji. He wants us to know that he's here. We have to look for him. And the final very sweet thing that someone told me, the caretakers of the gardens, the Crystal Hermitage Gardens, are very beautiful, very devout souls, and they're the ones who have planted all the many thousands of tulips, and 6,000 people, I think, this year came to see the gardens with the tulips, and they're wonderful souls. But they told me something yesterday that was just so touching. I had never heard. They said Swamiji told them some years ago, when you see the tulips and the wind looks like it's going through them and moving the tulips, he said, that might be me. So we should look for Swamiji and feel him and just know that just might be him, trying to reach us, giving us his love and his joy, as he always has and he always will. God bless you all.